What's up, guys? Back with another tutorial. This one should be a pretty good one. So today we're going to be cross-flashing a Dell PERC H200i for integrated RAID card. Integrated RAID card. We're going to be flashing this to a LSI 9211 8i with the brand new P20 firmware. And the reason why we're doing this is because when you originally get this card, my card came pre-installed in a Dell R610 server. So when we get this card is locked in a mode called IR, which is it's called Initiator Receiver, which is kind of stuck in like a RAID mode. So for us to unlock this card and get this card into a mode that we're going to call Initiator Target, or HBA Host Bus Address, another word for just another bunch of this. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be flashing this card from IR mode into IT mode, and we're going to be flashing it because the Dell PERC H200i integrated really is an LSI card, the chip. So we're going to be flashing it to an actual LSI model firmware BIOS. Well, it's going to keep the original Dell BIOS we're going to use, but we're going to be flashing it to the original LSI firmware, and that's going to unlock the IT part out of the card. So let's get going, guys. Let's get to the coding. So let me take you over to my screen here. All right. So I have a external drive that I plugged into my computer right here, this drive F. So what we're going to do, these are the files right here that we're going to be using to flash this RAID card. So I have Rufus. Actually, let me put that in here. So let's open up Rufus. Oh, I already have it in there. Okay, let's go through. Open it up. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to list USB hard drives. So that's my external drive right there. For the boot selection, we're not going to select an image or anything. We're just going to click here. We're going to click on free DOS. This is going to boot us into a MS-DOS mode. When we boot off the external drive, we're going to be booting into MS-DOS mode. So everything looks good. MBR, BIOS, boop, boop. All right, let's click start. And that's gonna go. So let me tell you guys also that we're all data on this device, okay, will be destroyed. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna be flashing this card directly in the computer in the original slot that it's in. I mean, there's lots of guides out there where you have to take the card out and put it into another computer, or you have to take like black tape and cover up 2 pins on the PCI card itself. But we are not going to be doing that. We are going to be flashing this card without even taking out the Dell server, right? It's going to be in the same integrated slot that the card came in. So this is finished here. We're going to close this. So now we should have a USB drive here. So this drive now is bootable as a MS-DOS drive. You can when we're booting up, we'll set our boot manager and boot off of this drive, and that will bring us into DOS. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the files from this folder, which is the flash files that we need. We're going to hit Control A, select all, Control C, copy, click over here, Control V, paste, and copy all the files over. So now we're going to have all the files that we need on this drive to do this flash and BIOS update. We're going to replace the files. Some of them are the same. That's okay. So that's all good. That's all good to go. We have all our files there. These are these bin files right here. These are the firmware files. We're not going to be using this one. We will be using this and this. And yeah, and the BIOS file would be this. This would be the Dell BIOS file right there. So yeah, so let's close this. Let's eject the disk out of my computer so we don't destroy the data. I'm going to be posting a link in the description so that you can download these files here. Yeah, so you can download it. It'll be in a zip format. You just extract it. It'll be like this, and you just open it up. Do what I did. Go into Rufus. You know, get your flash drive or your external. Format it into a FreeDOS or MS-DOS boot drive, and then take these files and copy them over, and you're good to go. So I'm gonna close off here now. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring you over to my Dell server now, where the card is actually installed, and I'm gonna take my external out of my out of the back of my computer, and I'm gonna be putting it into my Dell server here, and booting off of the Dell and flashing the card right here. So I'll be right back. So as you can see, this computer has the Dell PERC H200i for integrated. This is the firmware that's currently on. So we're going to be changing this, the IR, to the IT, which is short for Initiator Target. IR is short for Initiator Receiver, or another word for RAID. So what we're going to do right now, we are going to let me put the external drive into the I'm gonna plug the external drive right now into the server, or into the computer that I'm gonna be upgrading, where the card resides, that I'm gonna be updating. The card that I'm gonna be updating, I'm putting external in that computer right now. So now let's reboot right now. Exit and reboot. And oh. All right, guys, the system is now rebooting, and any second now we should get to restarting, and we're gonna. All right, guys, the system is now rebooting. Any second now we should. All right, here we go. So what we want to do right now, we want to boot off of the. We're gonna hit F11 right now, so that we can. By the way, this is the card here that we're gonna be flashing. This is the card right here. So as you can see, that's the firmware, everything right now. This is the card that we're going to be flashing, IR into IT. So we selected to boot the boot manager, so that we can select the external drive that we made with Rufus with the boot files on it. right. Select. I'm going to select the USB external drive. Now we're in DOS. Okay. Let's put this back a little bit so you can see. Okay. So let's clear the screen. CLS dir/w. All right, so SAS to FLSH. So let's do that. SAS F2 FLSH. And we do -help. All right, that's going to give us a bunch of verbs or arguments we can use with this program. So now we're going to do -list. This is going to display the adapters that's currently in our system. Let's get a pen here, so I'm going to have to write down. Okay. So what we need to do before we do anything actually is we need to write down this SAS address right here. This is very important. Make sure that you write down that address correctly. So that's 578.2B CB-0-47 B1 B500 57 82 BCB-47 B1 B500. Okay, so as you can see, it's the Dell card. The firmware is the IR PERC 200. Okay, so H200 integrated. Now let's erase this card. So we're gonna go SAS to FLSH -O for advanced mode -E erase 6. Okay, so it is now erasing the old firmware off this card. So let's wait a couple seconds here. Let's wait. It should be done any moment. These type of applications usually don't take that long when you're running in these DOS modes, free DOS modes. And I would like to let you guys know that we are doing this straight from the Dell R610 server itself. Oh, here we go. Let's finish. So let's do a list command again. See, so now the firmware is gone. So we're gonna quit, and I'm gonna reboot, and I will be right back when this computer reboots. Okay, the server is now rebooting. It should be up any moment. And yeah, I just want to let you guys know that we are doing this straight from the Dell R610 server machine itself. And I did not put any tape on any of the pins on this card. And I'm not moving this card from any slot. So this card is in the original slot that this machine came with, and we were just doing this as a bare bones flash. All right, so as you can see, this time it doesn't display any information about the card. It's like the system doesn't even see it. So dir/w, we're all booted up here. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna flash a temporary BIOS and firmware onto this card for the time being. So we're gonna do that by typing SAS to FLSH -O for advanced mode -B for the BIOS. We're going to use the H200 integrated.rom, and for the -F firmware, we're going to use the H200 integrated-FW firmware. Enter. Okay. It is now flashing a temporary firmware that we're going to use for this card for the time being. So it's flashing. It should take a couple moments here. After we do this, we are now going to add the SAS address or ID that we had written down earlier, which we're going to need to reprogram. We're going to do a list command, and we probably are going to get an error because that ID is not going to be there, or that ID field is going to be blank, and we need that ID to be there for this card to function properly. So let's just wait a sec here for this command to finish, flashing this temporary firmware onto this card. Okay, don't worry about that error. That error is okay. Now let's do a dir/w. So what we're going to do now, we're going to add the, let's do a list command again. Right. So let's see, it sees the card in the system. Oh, SAS address is there. All right, well, I'm going to show you anyways. I see that the SAS address is there, but let's just say, for instance, that address was not there. You can add that by typing SAS2FLSH-O for advanced -SAS add, and then you would type those numbers that you've written down. In my case, that would be 5782 BCB 047 B1 B500. You ignore those dashes. Enter. It's programming that address, and that's what you would do if that address was not there. So that's successful. So what we're going to do now, we are going to reboot the machine again. Control-Alt-Delete, and I will be back as soon as this machine starts to reboot. The server is now rebooting. There we go. Should be up any moment. Okay. Let's enter BIOS boot manager. The card didn't come up this time either. All right, so we're going to boot into the external drive. Okay, dir/w. So what we did in the last command, we entered a temporary BIOS firmware. We put our SAS address back. So what we're going to do now, we're going to write the updated firmware now. So we're going to do that by typing SAS2FLSH-O for advanced -F for firmware. And we're going to put the 2118 P7.bin. That's P7.bin right there. Enter. Right. give it some time here to do its operation. Would you like to flash anyways? We are going to say yes. Y for yes. And the firmware is downloading. It takes some time here. Just be patient. Oh, okay. Downloads a lot faster than erases. Usually it's the other way around. We're going to reboot this machine after this is over one more time. And when it reboots, our last step is going to be writing the official last firmware and ROM file, BIOS file to this card. And that's going to be the last step. Those are going to be the brand new firmware and BIOS, and that's going to be the IT mode firmware. So let's do a Control-Alt-Delete, restart the system, and I will be back when it starts to reboot. Server is rebooting. Should be up any moment. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. So the last step now, as soon as let's hit F11 to get into the boot manager. And as soon as this boots up, our last step is going to be writing the last official BIOS file and firmware file for this card. Right, so select there, dir/w. Okay. All right, so to write these two files now, we're going to use a different command this time other than the SAS2flash command. So this command is going to be S2FP19, and we're going to go -O for advanced, -B for BIOS, and that's going to be the MPT SAS2.ROM -F for firmware. That's going to be the 2118 IT .bin file. That's F B. Enter. Okay. This should be the last command. After this, we can do a list command to verify the card. And once that's finished and we reboot, this card should be working. And this upgrade will be completed. All right, firmware download successful. Verifying the firmware. Setting adapter. Adapter reset. Okay. So that was the firmware. Now it's flashing the BIOS. Which this BIOS is the Dell BIOS part of the card itself. When you enter Control C at the on the post screen to get into the card config through Dell. So that's finished. Let's do a list command. So we can do that by saying -C 0 -list. Okay. So we got the controller address, NV data. As you can see, this the SAS address or ID is all there, correct as my original before I flash the card. Let's wait for this to finish. There we go. So now, as you can see, this card is now 9211 8i from LSI H200 integrated, running in IT mode, or another name for Initiator Target. So is that, let's actually, let me do SAS to FLSH -list. See what comes up on through this command. Let's get information. As soon as this is done, we're going to reboot. And we're going to enter the BIOS config. The vendor is LSI. The firmware is 20. Perfect. So let's do let's reset this computer. And I will be right back. Computer is now rebooting. It should be up any moment. All right, here we go. Excited right now. Let's see what happens here. SAS. So we are going to hit Control C. Perfect. As you can see now, the card is now recognized by my Dell R610 again. Let's hit Control C. Get into setup. And as you can see, this card is now running in IT mode. Okay. And there you have it, guys. That is how you upgrade a Dell PERC H200 integrated I card running in IR or Initiator Receiver mode or RAID mode. And this is how you flash that card into an actual LSI 9211 8i running in Initiator Target mode or HBA or just another bunch of this. And thank you guys for watching this tutorial, and stay tuned for many more amazing tutorials to come. Peace, guys.